Okay, Rayman, what we got next?
Okay, so now we're going to talk a bit about fitness trackers. So talking about, say, your Fitbits, your Galaxy Watches, Apple Watches. Is there a place for them? Should they be used? Who should use them? What do you think of them? Who wants to go first?
You take the lead, Jenna.
I just think they're bullshit. I'm just gonna be. It's not that they're bullshit. I just think that they're a distraction. I think, I just don't think that they're very accurate as well. Like, probably the biggest one that people use it for is their heart rate, right? Yeah. So how many times have we run a course and we've done stuff around heart rate, and we've gotten people to use the watch they have in their hand, and we've tried to get them into different zones to expose them to the stress of that zone, heart rate zone. And how many times is it completely inaccurate? Yeah? So I think, personally, heart rate monitors, especially through watches and stuff like that, they're fine, but they're just a little bit gimmicky.
Okay, but then, so just all of them, all the time, no good?
No, I think if you're going to go, if heart rate is what you're after here, and you get a proper heart rate monitor and it's done accurately, and you perform a test where you're able to establish maximum heart rate pre-giving them the heart rate monitor to wear around their chest, fine. But these watches and stuff, they just make assumptions around what the person's maximum heart rate is and stuff like that. They're not accurate, in my opinion. They're just gimmicky.
Okay, so I'll leave you for a minute then. We'll stick with the heart rate on the watches.
So can I just ask one question there?
You can.
What do you mean about they make an assumption on their max heart rate? Because now, I could be wrong, but is it not simply just giving you a reading of the heart rate? The watches don't give you zones to work in.
No, they do. They do. Yeah, they do give you zones. And this is how they establish maximum heart rate. So they track the person's heart rate, and whatever that person's peak heart rate has been since they've started wearing the watch, they use that as a maximum heart rate. How many people do you know go out and do work to failure where they're actually establishing a true maximum heart rate? I don't know any, especially with the general population. Maybe with the athletic population, right?
Sorry, am I general population?
No, it's just I'm pointing that way. It's general population. No, so general population, I can't imagine my mother, who's 65 years of age, or my father going out and trying to hit, establishing a maximum heart rate. So if they wear a watch, that's going to be wrong, because it's going to take the maximum heart rate that watch has been at since they've started wearing it. So this is why I mean they're hocus pocus, and they're.
But some of them do use the 220 minus your age to just calculate the heart rate that way. Any problem with that?
We know again that is kind of nonsense. There's nothing to say that is inaccurate, because you use that on me. I've got a really low maximum heart rate, so I'm way off of that formula. So if you use that formula to establish my maximum heart rate, and then you were trying to put me in zones to train me, do energy system development stuff, you'd be way off.
And how did you work out your max heart rate that you know it's low?
Because I actually did a yo-yo intermittent recovery 1 test, and I wore a proper heart rate monitor around my chest. So they were actually able to see what my maximum heart rate was, what level I had to step out at. And then when they were programming for me in terms of energy system development sessions, they knew the zones that I had to be in to achieve whatever adaptation I was trying to achieve from that session.
Cool. So the chest straps, happy enough with those. So should a general population, if they want to know the heart rate, get one of them and use them for anything? Even going for a walk and stuff? If they want to know the heart rate zones, or if they were doing workout, general population people, is there any need for them to know it?
Well, maybe. Well, put this to Craig, because he's our exercise physiologist. But here's isn't there a fundamental problem with trying to establish heart rate with general population? Because Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to do an incremental treadmill test, or you have to do some test where you're pushing the individual into a maximum heart rate zone. But that's massively dangerous with general population.
Well, when you say general population, it depends on it's a very broad spectrum. There are a lot of general population will be able to go to that, but you're also going to have if you don't have a background, if you don't have a medical history or a background with regards to their physical activity levels, it's probably you don't want to be doing that. So you generally want to err on the side of caution and not try and gauge what their max heart rate is through a test to exhaustion, like the yo-yo test or a VO2 max test. So that's yes, you're probably not going to, if you have a client come in, you've never worked with them before, and that's the first thing you do with them, I would probably question, unless you know for a fact that they are somewhat trained or they have done this before and don't have any contraindications.
With two things there. With our first, it depends, and it took a whole 5 minutes, and then Craig kind of agreed with Shane for the first time ever.
No, but that goes back to the point that you can't, it's probably dangerous if they don't have a background in fitness. There's not that many people that come from the general population world that have a good training age. So therefore it's just dangerous to do a maximum heart rate test with them, and therefore if they're going off of their watch, it's going to establish their heart rate, their peak heart rate since they started wearing the watch as a maximum heart rate, therefore their zones are wrong. Therefore, if they're using their watch or whatever device to establish a training zone, it's not accurate. Make sense?
Yeah, so for training zones, probably not the best. Then the other thing, we'll just go quickly on, within all those watches now, they all give a resting heart rate. Think that's any good? Good, bad?
I think the resting heart rate, a lot of the research shows that the inaccuracies in kind of fitness trackers are going to be when it's higher intensity or when it's interval based. So I think resting heart rate, it's actually reasonably accurate. It's obviously not 100%, it's never going to be 100%, but it's relatively accurate. So you can use it as a way of tracking your resting heart rate. And also, I think we kind of glossed over in the first part of it is a lot of general population people aren't going to be using it for zones or aren't going to be using it for RA max stuff. They're going to be I want to get my steps to 10 or 15,000, or I want to increase them by 5 to increase very low level overall activity, which I think is good. So it's, again, they have a method of tracking it. So again, if they go from 15,000 steps a day to 20,000 steps a day, fair enough, it mightn't be very accurate. But at the end of the day, you can tell that they have increased their overall activity, so they've increased their.
But is that accurate? The steps?
The steps are accurate.
Not going to be, again. It's not going to be.
Have you counted your steps?
What? Yeah, I
counted
every day.
Do you not hear the noise in the whole time? 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's why he wears those tap shoes.
Yeah. No, but from once again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the research around them is that they're fairly accurate with regards to steps. Now, obviously, look, there's a broad spectrum of watches you're using as well. So there's going to be some watches that are really crap at this. You're going to have other watches that are fairly decent. I actually, just going back to the heart rate stuff, because I think we're going to start getting off track here. But I have an Apple Watch and I have the heart rate monitor, and I've done this at home where, say, I was on the bike or went for a run or a walk, and they've actually, my Apple Watch and the heart rate monitor have actually been really accurate. I brought it up to I got up to zone 4, the very start of zone 4, and it was still accurate. Now I would imagine the watch might have started to struggle once we got past that, but from with the Apple Watches, they seem very accurate for the first 3 zones. Even with resting heart rate, I had the strap on one day just sitting at the desk. Both of them were literally within they were the exact same beat. It was 68 beats. Yeah,
but mate, you're a very bad example, because you've done maximum heart rate training before, probably with that watch on.
No.
No, Craig
it's
doesn't
actually a
run.
relatively new watch.
Craig just tells people
So you've
to run.
never done heart rate training. You've never done it
I've never done
maximal lifts in the gym. You've never done any running stuff outside where your heart rate has gone up to its max.
Probably not with the watch, but that's not what
But that's my point. Is that what you have? Because the other day you told me you deadlift 200 kilos on the last course we were on.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't have my watch on.
Throw off his mechanic.
Yeah.
So, but that's my point. That is if general population don't push themselves into those zones, so how is the watch being accurate if they don't push themselves into those zones?
But this is what the watch wasn't giving me the zone. The watch was only giving me a heart rate. I only knew my zone based off my heart rate monitor. So like that's why I was asking, where were you getting that information about that the watches give you heart rate zones? Like, one thing, I'm not saying they don't, but my watch doesn't. It just gives me the heart rate that you're at.
That's what watches will do. They'll establish zones for you, training zones.
Yeah, okay.
That's what they essentially do.
Yeah, but that's all I was saying. Like, mine isn't based off zones. Mine is just picking up my heart rate at that particular moment in time. It's not telling me what zone I'm in. It's just like, your heart rate is 112. And then I was comparing that to my heart rate monitor, which had my zones worked out. So on that Polar app, it gives you the zones you're in, and then it also gives you your heart rate that you're working at that particular moment in time. So that's where, like, but once again, there's such a wide variety of like watches that track your heart rate. Yeah. Some of them are going to be more accurate than others, but for the most part, I think they're like within the first like couple of zones, like they're fairly decent for low heart rates. I'm not even going to say zones, but like that lower stuff, if you're just going for a walk or a jog, you can track your daily steps on it, and like obviously depending on the watch, you can do a few other things on it as well. So like if that's all you want, like it's probably not a bad thing, especially like if you're going to get a watch anyway. I mean,
it's also like fitness trackers and stuff are still very much in their infancy, and like they are getting progressively better and better.
Yeah, like there's that Aura ring out now that's meant to be extremely accurate.
Yeah, and then the Whoop one's not supposed to be so good because they made up all their own stuff basically.
Yeah,
apparently
they're
it's
like
not that good
recovery metrics. Yeah, the actual.
The measurement's supposed to be fine,
of Whoop is
but
good. They
their
just have their own
algorithm, what they've made
it's
up.
kind of, they're trying to like reinvent the wheel kind of thing. But the
more
actual
of a
measuring, so the
sales
unit
gimmick.
itself is quite good. They're just trying to sell it so that no one apart from Whoop knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
which isn't true. But yeah, I think they're in their infancy, so it's a step in the right direction. Like, we're in Ireland, it could just as easily have been a watch that beeps when you're within a mile of an off license. Like, that's the way we could have gone. Like, so like fitness trackers are a step in the right direction.
Jesus, that might be a new business idea.
Patent pending.
Yeah.
Just here, lads, go beep around the town. That and Craig talking about his steps 1, 2.
Yeah. But I know, like, look, I do actually agree with Shane though. If performance is your thing, like if you're working with, if you plan on like running a 5k, 10k marathon, and you actually care about heart rate zones, and you plan on taking it to like zone 4, zone 5, if that's what you're using, then like you have to invest in a heart rate monitor. Like, there's no watches aren't going to cut it there.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a high performance measuring tool.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be treated as such either. Like, it's a
Just one quick story before we end on this. One of the athletes 2 or 3 years ago, before the pandemic came in, he was like, I can't. So I gave them, was it zone 2 or zone 3 stuff to do tempo work in? I think it was zone 3, and he was like, I can't do the tempo stuff. And the reason being was because it was actually like a zone 4, high zone 4, low zone 5 that he was working in when we actually worked out his maximum heart rate. So that's why I'm just like, the watches are nonsense.
Yeah, fair enough. Like, it shouldn't be used for something like that, but I think general population are just trying to overly increase you're just trying to keep a track of your heart rate, like resting heart rate, I think is quite handy, or just generally trying to increase your activity. It could be quite handy.
Right, we're coming to the end, but quickly, which is the last thing the watches do, sleep. For tracking sleep, any good, anyway?
Again, kind of similar. I think it's okay if you're just trying to track how much hours of sleep you get. I think when it tries to break down REM sleep and deep sleep, I don't think maybe that they're not there yet, but from any kind of research I've read or any sleep expert that I've heard, they're not worth counting on. But I think for just generally tracking how many hours of sleep you get, it's good, especially if you do struggle with sleep. So you can see if you're progressing, but to break it down, I think it'll probably do more harm than good.
So I think that's such an important thing to be able to track is your sleep. And I actually don't know, or haven't heard or spoke to or done it myself even, tracking my sleep through a watch. But from my experience, I can't imagine them to be too accurate doing it. But I think if you could get a device that did that accurately, that is hugely beneficial to the individual.
That Aura
considering
ring,
how important sleep is.
Accurate.
What?
That Aura ring is meant to be quite accurate. That's what they initially sold it as, to monitor your sleep. Like, they give a load of different stuff. They give like heart rate variability. To give that REM and what's the other one? rapid eye movement and non-rapid eye movement sleep. They have like a lot of different metrics to go off as well. But like as far as I know, the research on the new one, they have like an updated version of it. Basically, it's meant to be fairly accurate. So I'm not sure about watches though.
Cool. So finishing up there, the watch is probably not good for athletes. Definitely not good for your training zones. Use the actual heart rate monitor. But then, as an activity tracker, could have place for general population. And then I've seen similar enough from personal experience and research with sleep, as in it's good to tell you when you went to bed and then when you got out of bed, but all the data in between's pretty shaky.
So to conclude, if you want a good gimmick to hang your hat on, use a watch.
Oh, thanks for
Tells
that.
time as well.
Oh yeah, watches tell times. Yeah, there you go.